Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to another episode of Podcast, the podcast where you don't have to be Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom, Vikings tier Grossi, and today, it's the first preview of the season, and right off the bat, it's gonna be something special. Drew already changed out to make sure that the Brett Favre jersey was on display, and so with me today to break down week one, we got the folks from Vikings Report with Drew and Ted. Ladies and gentlemen, Drew and Ted.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
They're not booing. They're saying Drew.
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
Drew. I want them to boo. Come on, boo away, man. Boo away.
Guys, I appreciate you taking the time. I can already tell that this is going to be an experience, 100%. But the Minnesota Vikings, you guys, last year, you were the team that was like, if the last 2 minutes of the year, like every game did not exist, you guys were a playoff team. Like you guys did it. So I don't know if you want to hang a banner for that, but I mean, the option is there.
Best 58-minute team in football.
Yeah, Lord knows. We've been waiting to hang a banner 61 years. Might as well hang that one.
I'm just saying, you could roll it out. Drew, you already showed me the towel of the back-to-back division champs. Do they make shirts with that too?
Tom, I know you want to see it again. Tell me, boy.
Like, is it at some point the Vikings are like, listen, we got to capitalize when we can. Like, if it got like a trifecta, you're just like, we did it, boys. Hang the banner. Let's go. Let's get it done.
If they go back to back division championships, I'm getting that T-shirt and framing it. By God,
they're throwing a parade in downtown Minneapolis. The birds will never be safe.
Jesus, dude, how many Packer helmets do you got on that test?
So what I do is I just collect a Packers hat every single time the Vikings choke away a victory. So I've amassed kind of like a good collection here. It's pretty solid.
Wow.
Do you want me to hide the Super Bowl hats? I don't want anyone to get
upset.
That's okay.
Okay. It's a better collection than Lynn Dickey has.
Wow. We're 5 minutes in and we're throwing Lynn Dickey jokes. Got him. So bringing back the fact that you guys, you played really well up until like those last 2 minutes. I know talking to a lot of Vikings fans, some were like torn and were like, listen, like Zimmer just has to go. And that's why it's the conservative play calling. We need to move on. We're so defensively oriented and the defense was not up to par last year. Can you kind of like break down kind of what was going on last year? And now that you have Kevin O'Connell that has now taken over, kind of like what differences do you expect to see within the team?
I'd like to see a 21st century offense for one. I mean, when Mike Zimmer came to the Vikings, was hired, I think he was the right coach at the right time. I mean, he was a defensive-minded coach. The Vikings defense was atrocious. That was his big resume builder. And the Vikings had a very good defense for a good part of his tenure. But he was stuck in the offense just needs to be good enough to score 17, 20 points and let the defense do the rest. And that's fine if you've got a really good defense. But the last 2 years, the Vikings defense was absolutely terrible. Last year, they bottomed out. I mean, they were, I think, 32nd in just about every major statistical category or close to it. So it was obvious that Zimmer and Spielman had to go. And I like what they did with Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah hiring as GM and Kevin O'Connell as a coach, offensive-minded coach. They've got a good offense, great playmakers already. Let's see what he can do with it.
I mean, it makes sense. The Vikings are always that team. Obviously, the Packers know them very well. It's like, but you have the trifecta on offense that like any team would be envious of. You have Adam Thielen, who's one of the best red zone targets in the NFL. Justin Jefferson. The only positive that I have of him being on your team is I just hope he bankrupts you guys with a new contract. That's the only thing, because otherwise he's burning the crap out of us. And you have Dalvin Cook, who's arguably a top 5 running back. So, like, can you explain to me, and is that part of the frustration with Zimmer, that it's like, hey, like, invest in this offense and, like, see, if Kirk can start ripping it down the field a little bit and, like, utilizing these playmakers, because we shouldn't be losing these close games.
They've had that offensive trifecta even way back with Teddy and Adrian Peterson. They've had that for years and haven't been able to accomplish anything with it. We've been frustrated, Ted and I, for the last few years with Zimmer and his lack of not being aggressive and his ass puckering in the last 2 minutes, coaching scared, just all that stuff combined. He lost those games because he didn't put his foot on the gas. You got to beat teams when they're down, and for some reason he would call these really weird timeouts. Ted, the Kansas City game at Arrowhead, when the Vikings had the game sealed on the strip sack, but he called a timeout. I don't know. I reached the end of it. Like Ted said, he started out like gangbusters, Tom, but you know what? It happens to a lot of coaches like Dick Vermeil and the old guys. They go through a burnout stage, and that's what Zimmer hit. He burned out. Time to move on, and he lost the fire. They're always hungry the first year. Like O'Connell. Okay, when O'Connell wins this game Sunday, he's going to have the fire.
Yeah.
And let's not even question whether the Vikings are going to win that game Sunday. So.
I heard there was like if. I heard the if. Don't worry. I'm going to make sure that part's really loud in the post edit. But for you guys, like heading in with a new regime, so you got a new GM, you got a new head coach. The draft comes along.
Yeah.
And as a Packers fan, I'm confused because, you trade away, was it the 12th overall pick to the Lions? They go and get Jamison Williams, who you guys did not need, right? But it seemed like the amount that you got back in terms of a top 15 pick really wasn't there. I think you still got like good players, but I'm just curious on what your thoughts are. Like when you're sitting there watching the draft going, oh, okay.
For me,
Ted.
Yeah.
Guy that hadn't taken a wide receiver in 7 years is confused by our draft.
Listen,
here's my thing.
Listen, Drew. Listen. It doesn't matter if you take him in the first, the second, the fourth, the eighth. Hold up the towel again. That's what you got, buddy.
Look, I got this from Equiminius St. Brown. Is that his name?
Equiminius St. Brown. Yeah, listen, he's on the Bears now, that guy. So.
Oh, Bears. Look out for the Bears. They're 4 wins this year. I'm sorry, Ted, back to you.
No, here's the thing. You look at that Lions Vikings trade in a vacuum. Drew and I have said multiple times, we did our live draft show, post-draft recap, that trade in the vacuum, the Vikings didn't get enough back.
Yeah.
However, that second round trade, no offense, but I think they fleeced the Packers. They traded.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. They traded 34 for 53 and 59. And when you take, and then later on in that round, they traded 53, 77, and 192, one of the picks we got from Green Bay, for 42 and 122. They ended up with a first round pick and a second round pick. They ended up, when it was all said and done, with Lewis Cine, Andrew Booth Jr., Ed Ingram, and linebacker Brian Asamoah out of Oklahoma with those picks and the way they move. So when you take everything in total, I thought the Vikings and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah had a very good weekend. But I agree with you that, man, I wish they could have gotten maybe a second or third round pick or something next year.
Right.
But overall, I can't complain because they got Cine, who's going to be starting soon, Andrew Booth, who's going to be seeing some playing time Sunday, Ed Ingram, who won the right guard job in training camp. He's now the Vikings starting right guard, and Brian Asamoah, who had a fantastic training camp. So I've got no complaints.
Look at the draft of these guys compared to last year. Tom, all of our draft picks from last year are pretty much gone.
Yeah. They had 4 third-round draft picks, and 3 of them are got cut. They're gone.
Listen, you just took a page out of the Raiders playbook. It happens, You're just like, I'm going to get you just looked the wrong page. That's all it is. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like the Packers, they were put in a position where they're like, oh crap, we need to go get Christian Watson, right? Because that was their guy. And yes, you 100% took advantage of that. I was just more referring to like that first, because there's only so many top 15 picks that it's like, hey, maybe we could have gotten a little bit more value here. I mean, I know the Lions were very happy about it.
Yeah, and this is kind of another pet peeve on social media and even among Vikings fans is that everybody says, man, the Vikings made made 2 trades and they gave Detroit Jamison Williams, they gave Green Bay Christian Watson, and nobody's really taking into consideration that, hey, maybe Lewis Cine, Andrew Booth Jr. and a Caleb Evans, a guy they got in the 4th round that was all part of that mix as well, might be good enough to match up with those guys in the future. So let's see how it plays out.
Yeah, no, I 100%. I mean, Lewis Cine was a guy that I was seeing like coming out of college, and I was like, oh, he's going to be good. You guys definitely needed secondary help. And to kind of talk about the differences between the team now, so the 2022 Minnesota Vikings as opposed to 2021, there seemed to be like a conscientious effort to be like, hey, let's fix this defense. You go and you'll get Zadarius Smith article coming out this week about how he is very excited to play the Green Bay Packers once again, right? You're shoring up the secondary like we just talked about. So what do you think are going to be some of like the main differences if you had to narrow it down between 2 and 3, between last year's team and this year's squad?
The Vikings were just confused last year. The whole Zimmer, Tom, you got to understand, Tom, the Zimmer thing left a gloom over the team.
Yeah.
Players didn't want to be there. Players in the locker room didn't, there was separation. Zimmer had the poopy britches thing going on. Nobody was happy.
Who was your QB that Zimmer was just like, I've seen enough of him, or I see him every day?
Kellen Mond. Late last year after the Packers game in Lambeau last year, yeah.
So there's a whole different winning culture that's coming to Minnesota since February. I mean, this whole people just say you hire a new coach, a new GM. It's been a lot more than that. It's been a lot more than that, and I think that's why Zadarius Smith is coming over here, because he sees you can play with Hunter and get a buttload of sacks, and the Vikings are going to be more competitive. And when they go to Lambeau this field, they ain't going to have Sean Mannion, dude. So just to put that away right now, it's going to be a different story. I think the Vikings it just depends on their defense. Their defense was horrible last year.
Yeah. And I would imagine you would see, because we were talking about Zimmer and now compared to Kevin O'Connell, like you're going to see more of an emphasis, I would hope or assume, on the offense to be like, hey, like we got the players, let's go. And speaking of players, so Kirk Cousins, who when you first signed him, I was pretty happy about that. We thought that deal was crazy with $84 million. And then some of these other deals down the line with other QBs gotten even crazier. But Kirk Cousins gets a lot of crap, and I will be very honest. I give him lots of crap, but statistically, he is not as bad as a lot of people are saying that he is. So what are your thoughts on Cousins? Is he like the guy it's like, hey, you know what? At bare minimum, he's a good QB, and he can take us to where we got to go because we have the team around him to get to that destination?
You know, Drew and I have, I think both of us have evolved somewhat on Kirk Cousins. Neither one of us were fired up about the signing. His first couple of years were very shaky. He sort of started to win me over last year. He had, I think, 5 or 6 games that he led the Vikings on late that had the defense not collapsed or the kicker had not missed a kick, the Vikings would have won. And there would not be the Kevin O'Connell era starting Sunday in Minnesota. And for whatever, you know, whether you want to say he's the guy or he isn't the guy, he is the guy for at least the next 2 years. And for all of the criticisms I have given Kirk, and for all the credit I have given Kirk, no matter what side of the fence you're on with him now, I would think most everybody would agree that this year he has no excuses.
Sure.
Kirk, the Kirk defenders in the bunker and to the very last person were like, well, it's always somebody else's fault. It's always the offensive line's fault. It's the uncreative play calling. It's whatever. He has everything he needs. He has a good offensive line. You talked about the great playmakers that the Vikings already have. He has a coach that he likes and that he's worked with. And not only likes, that he has a coach that does not openly detest him. I mean, Mike Zimmer he just literally hated Kirk Cousins. And I'm sorry, no matter what job you have, no matter how much money you make, if your boss hates you, it's going to affect your performance. You're not going to want to make a mistake because you're not going to want to get chewed out or whatever the dynamic was. So he has no more excuses. He has a coach that's offensive minded, that has a creative mind to generate points and yards. And if he cannot do it this year with these playmakers and this coach, he will never do it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a solid way to put it. I mean, you have a couple of those guys throughout the league that are in that position, right? It's like the Jalen Hurts or like Tua. And I think Kirk Cousins can be in that conversation. It's like, hey, we got you your new coach. Like, we have all these weapons. The offensive line is a lot better than what it was. Because I remember when that was like the major weak point of the Vikings. You have a run game that you can rely on with Cook and Madison. So it's like, hey, it's put up or shut up time.
Here's probably the answer I should have gave you the first time. You got Mike Zimmer, knows nothing about offense. Nothing. Clint Kubiak, who's nothing more than a position coach or a water boy, being your offensive coordinator. There's nothing on that side of the ball. Kirk Cousins had no coordinator and a head coach who knew nothing about offense. And he still finished 10th? Were they finish in offense?
10th or 11th. They were still a borderline top 10 offense last year.
You take that garbage out, Tom. You bring in the new staff with Wes Phillips as the OC, O'Connell calling the plays. It's a complete facelift. If Cousins was that good with those crappy guys. What's he going to be with these guys? That's probably the answer. You better be ready. The Vikings could score 35-40 every week.
Okay.
I don't know how good the defense is going to be, but
you're like, they may have to score 35-40 per week, but as long as we give up only 30, we're solid. And that kind of points me to, before we look at Sunday's game, looking ahead at this season, like, what are the expectations for the Minnesota Vikings from the fan base? Is it like, hey, like, we're going to be competing for the division title? Like, we're looking at the playoffs? Where are you guys at?
I don't know about Drew, but I think before all the changes were made, I thought they were a borderline wild card team, nine-ish wins. I think they're very capable of winning. Again, the big asterisk here is the defense. If the defense plays well, this is a 10 or 11 win football team, and I think they'll be in contention for the division title. I truly, firmly believe that, but a lot hinges on how much the defense improves.
How good are they going to be? The Viking fans, a good supply of them, say we're not going to win any games because they're Viking fans. That's how they look at it before the season even starts.
Listen, if you have no expectations, you can't be disappointed. That's it.
They got everything Ted just said. I think I held Zimmer's feet to the fire, and I said, yeah, that's a playoff roster. It's a better roster now, so O'Connell has to get him to the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's valid. I think the one thing that you do have, and we'll kind of jump into this next part here, of like why the Vikings will win on Sunday, right? So we'll kind of look at like why they'll win, why they'll potentially lose. When we're looking at the winning aspect of it, you have a defensive line and edge rushers who can get after the QB, right? The Packers' offensive line, a little shaky right now. We don't know if David Bakhtiari is going to be back. We don't know if Elton Jenkins is going to be back. They're participating in team drills, which is great, but we don't know.
Bakhtiari,
baby.
Last time that guy played, Sugar Ray had a top 10 hit. When's the last time that guy's been on the
It's okay.
Bakhtiari.
We got the titles to cry ourselves to sleep with. That's it. Drew's like, I will always have this towel. That's it. He's just like, I'm just waiting for the next one to print on out. I'll be first in line.
If the house burns down, I guarantee this towel's going to get out. It's going to be the first thing. Oh, wait, you, honey, and then the towel. Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I mean, like they can move themselves. It's fine. The towel is defenseless. So can you kind of explain to me, just like in a few different statements, like why you think the Vikings have a great shot to win it this Sunday against the Packers?
For me, it's an improved defense. I think I know Green Bay runs a base 3-4 as well, but it's a new defense. The Packers have never seen it before. They really don't have any film to go off of from years past. You talked about how well the Vikings and Packers know each other. I think the Vikings defense has an advantage, at least for the first half of the game, doing things that Matt LaFleur and the Packers haven't seen before. If the offense gets on track pretty fast, I like the fact that it's at home for Minnesota. Everybody's fired up about the new coach, the new era, this shiny, happy people, new vibe. I like the momentum the Vikings have coming into this game, and if they can capitalize on that, and the defense confuses Aaron Rodgers and the offense enough, they'll be able to win this game. Yes.
Drew's like, I concur.
I got the good and bad, and I can tell you why they're going to win or why they're going to lose.
All right, so finish the win part, and then we'll jump into why you potentially could lose.
They're going to win because when it comes to the Packers-Vikings, whoever runs the ball more efficiently wins these games. I mean, it seems like it's been like that ever since 1975. What Jones did in 2019 when he tore the Vikings a new b-hole with that 154-yard game. We know what he can do. We got Cook. The Vikings, if they run the football better and just their weapons on the outside, I think they're going to win it. They got the fans. They got the emotion. Kevin O'Connell, we got to win. Zadarius Smith firing the defense up. Zadarius Smith's going to be all over that locker room saying, we ain't losing this game. You can lose next week on Monday night to the Eagles, but we are not losing this game. So that's an intangible that has to be taken into consideration, all that stuff. That's why I think the Vikings are going to walk away with the win. If it was in Green Bay, it'd be a different story for me. But
sure. Well, so kind of like to look at the inverse of that and why the Vikings, like where the concern is the majority of the concerns lying with the defense? Is there any concern? It's like, okay, it's Kevin O'Connell's like big first game as like a head coach. Maybe there's going to be some learning curves. It is also September week 1, right? That's where like the anomaly crazy things happen. So you kind of never know. So what are you kind of honing in on and being like, oh, this is the kind of stuff that I'd be concerned about, whether it's on the Packers side or it's on the Vikings?
This is what I'm worried about. First off, everybody needs to watch this game. Out of the 8 linebackers that are playing, 7 of them are like Pro Bowlers. This is a great linebacking game. If you're a linebacker, you want to learn. Packers have 4 of the best. Vikings with Kendricks, and it's going to be good. What concerns me is Kenny Clark running over half our center, who's only half a player, and burying that guy. I'm really worried about the interior of that being a real big mismatch with Kenny Clark. I'm also worried about, are the corners going to be ready to take on Aaron Rodgers? Because that guy is a wizard back there. He'll play you right out of position. He'll play you out of position. He'll get you out of position. So they got to lean heavily on Eric Kendricks and Harrison Smith, but I'm worried about the young corners dealing with Aaron Rodgers, who that guy is amazing back there. But those are my two main concerns.
Yeah.
For me, I agree about Kenny Clark. I also, we talked about the Vikings defense. They were just absolutely atrocious against the run last year. And Drew brought up the point about the team that can run the ball better usually wins. If the Vikings cannot at least somewhat make the Packers offense one-dimensional, and putting the ball in Aaron Rodgers' hands isn't the greatest option, but if Aaron Jones consistently has his runs, consistently have Green Bay in 2nd and 4, 3rd and 2, it's going to be a long day for the Vikings defense. And if they can't stop Aaron Jones, they're not going to win the game.
And Dylan. They got a great
Dylan.
That's what I was going to put in. Cause right now, because you had people with nagging injuries the past couple of years, Dylan hadn't really come along. Now, that's kind of going to be I don't want to say a staple, but it's kind of going to be a staple of that offense, right? So you have Aaron Jones, you have AJ Dillon, and looking at the run defense of the Vikings last year, if that's going to be put to the test immediately, especially as we have very new wide receivers that we're, attempting to work out. Yeah, I'm very interested in this game just because it's kind of, hey, where are we? What kind of Packers team are you going to see? Because it might look different. We're not focusing on Devontae Adams, obviously, because he's gone. And then in terms of the Vikings, it's hey, you still have that offensive firepower. Is the defense able to catch up or at least limit enough points that they could potentially pull off the
What are you concerned about? Give me the reason the Packers are going to win, then I can hold the towel up and laugh at you.
I got you. Okay. So honestly, one of the biggest things is going to be Kenny Clark. I think Bradbury, he could cause some problems, but the biggest thing in terms of that defensive line is finally, and this has been a long time coming as a Packers fan, we have rotational guys that we can put next to Kenny Clark, right? We got Jaron Reed, who's going to be a big one. TJ Slayton, who was a pick last year. Devontae Wyatt, who was a first-round pick, who's coming along slow in camp. I don't think you're going to see too much of him. But I know Rashawn Gary, for example, he went on a tear last year and is just getting better and better. Love me some Rashawn Gary. Preston Smith.
School, Tom?
Yeah, trust me, I know. I am very, very aware.
We got to do this on his show. We do this enough on our show. You got to come and do this on his show. Go Bucks. Well, whatever.
Or whatever. It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, so I think, but that defense, but then also the secondary, I think the Packers could have a top 5 secondary, potentially even top 3. Jair Alexander coming back. That can't be overstated how great that he is. On top of that, you have Rasul Douglas and Eric Stokes who are back there, 3 very good corners. You have Amos and Savage who are back there as well. And then we have actual middle linebackers now. Campbell, who had an all-pro year last year. On top of that, Quay Walker, our first-round draft pick, looked really good in camp. So, the defense is kind of where I'm the most excited. And you might just see a running football team. Oh, and also a back-to-back MVP at QB. So I think that there's enough nuance there, and it might be enough smash mouth football on the defensive side to get us the win. Now, in terms of losing, Dalvin Cook, who every now and then decides to absolutely destroy us and has been the reason why you guys have won some of those games, literally just Dalvin Cook.
Yep.
That's one, even though our run defense did get better last year. 2 is Justin Jefferson. The guy is just a monster. He has torn up our secondary. It doesn't matter how good we perform against other teams. Justin Jefferson is just that dude. And I'm okay admitting that because I wanted him in the draft. So that's totally fine. On top of that, we do, like I said, we have young guys. On top of that, Alan Lazard just got stepped on. So we don't know if he's going to play. So you might just have Romeo Dobbs out there, Sammy Watkins out there, Randall Cobb. So it might just be kind of a hodgepodge of wide receivers. And while I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, if you do make them one-dimensional, those receivers have to be ready to play.
I think your receiver group is without Devontae Adams. And look, Christian Watson may be good, but Sammy Watkins is just a guy. Randall Cobb is just a guy. They just seem very pedestrian. And I hate to say this with Aaron Rodgers, but as your guy pulling the trigger, but it's going to be a very good test for this young Viking secondary to see
Sure.
to see how they stack up.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Rodgers makes wide receivers better,
He
right?
does.
Just because of him being who he is. Like you said, because he literally can get guys open just with his eyes. So he can do that. It's just going to be, okay, how much of a learning curve is there going to be? Because Sammy Watkins, a veteran, but brand new to the offense. On top of that, Christian Watson probably not going to play. There's some potential he doesn't. But Romeo Doubs had a really nice preseason. We'll see how the young kid can do. There is definitely some question marks there. And I'm more curious to see the differences between our teams when we meet the second time later down the season, because then I think we'll have a better idea for both of us what the identity of our teams are.
Yeah,
sure.
I think so too. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd buy that. Sure.
Yeah.
He makes his receivers look better, but he also makes defensive backs look bad. You know where Rodgers beats you? And I tell Viking fans this all the time. When Rodgers gets flushed out of the pocket, all the defenders, the corners, they leave their man.
Yep.
And then you can't leave the number one rule when you play him, and Zimmer used to tell the guys this, don't leave your man.
Yeah.
Don't leave him open, because that's where Rodgers makes his bread. I mean, he's killer at that. He is killer at that. So
extending the play. Yep. Yeah. Rodgers has always been like incredible on that.
That sideline pass he made against Dallas a few years ago, like 40
Jared Cook, baby.
That's what he does to you right there.
Yeah, exactly. So to kind of like summarize, what are your guys' predictions for the game? Whether you want to do like a points thing or whether you want to do in terms of just like, how you think it's going to turn out.
I'm not going to do a points thing. I think the Vikings are going to win. I just really like the momentum that has been built up this offseason. I think Green Bay, I think losing Devontae Adams is going to be a bigger deal than is being let on. I'm not too familiar with it, Tom, but there was a thing in camp where Rodgers called out the wide receivers or something, and then he had to have a sit down with them the next day and say, look, it's really not that bad, or something like that. The Packers defense is good, but I think the Vikings offense matches up with them very well. You mentioned Justin Jefferson, but Adam Thielen's still pretty good.
Oh,
KJ Osborne really emerged last year. Irv Smith Jr. is coming back. The Vikings have enough skill guys to find a mismatch somewhere, and Kevin O'Connell is a guy that is good at taking advantage of mismatches. So I like the Vikings.
Yeah.
He did what? Oh, Al Michaels. Whenever these teams get together, it's my favorite 2 games of the year. It was when I was a kid. It is now. And just like the power of Mr. Tommy Kramer, like you see there, my buddy Tommy Kramer, Kirk Cousins is going to be carving them up like Tommy did back in Lamblo. Okay. I got the Vikings winning by a field goal. It's always a field goal game, Ted. Tom.
Oh, buddy, that's nerve-wracking, huh? Yeah, got to make those field goals.
30, 38, 35, 35. If we need to, we'll get Ryan Longwell back in here.
Bring him back. It's fine. That's it.
It's going to be a hell of a test. It's going to be a hell of a game. And these are 2 teams I think, well, everybody's picking the Packers to win the NFC, but I think the Vikings are going to be sneaky good. This is a great start for O'Connell. If he starts out against the Falcons or somebody or the Jaguars, people are going to say, well, that's the Falcons. He's starting out. You're taking on the best week 1. So it's a good challenge for him. It's a good challenge for us. I think we sneak out the win in this particular game. I know that sounds homerific, but before we go, tell Matt LaFleur I got a Vikings. He has to put it together, though. It's kind of a puzzle. But I saved that. I saved that for LaFleur because I know LaFleur likes to do puzzles in his off time.
Listen, I know you guys just hired Kevin O'Connell because you needed somebody to compete with most handsome coach in the league. I see what you guys are doing. I see what you're doing. Listen, I'm just saying, we can start pulling things out. Like we got Vikings voodoo dolls. We got the works over here. So like
what's the biggest hate for Packers fans? We don't talk to a lot of Packers. What is the thing they hate the most about the Vikings?
Oh, 100% it's going to be the celebration of like breaking collarbones and things like that. Like the fact that like that's in the newspaper. So I'll tell you a really quick story.
Go for it.
I don't remember what paper it was, but it was in some paper. Like it was like the highlights of like the 2010s or something like that. And like on it for Minnesota was that tackle of Anthony Barr on Aaron Rodgers. And lots of Packer fans were very upset. So I saw that. And instead of getting really angry, what I did is I went to a Minnesota charity that gives out guide dogs to like people who are homebound or children who are sick. And we raised $3,000 to name the dog Lambo. So somebody in Minnesota now has a guide dog named Lambo. And I was
That's good. That's very cool.
There's like the pettiness that it's like, hey, I hate you guys, but I'm going to do it in such a way that's so petty and good.
I think that video you're talking about was actually put out by the Vikings after Anthony Barr signed with the Jets. And even I kind of
that one too. Yeah, that was the most recent one. Yeah, this one was from a few years ago. It was like in a newspaper when they were just like highlighting the 2010s, the best stuff for Minnesota sports. And I was like, really, guys? Like that was it? Like Drew's holding up his towel and he's like, back-to-back division champs.
Well, yeah. Come on now. I'm spoiled, Tom. Back in 68 to 78. Bud Grant won the division 10 years in a row. That's what Ted and I grew up with.
There you go.
So we're trying to hang on to all that stuff.
Oh man, so you guys are living in the past more than the Bears right now. Like that's where that is.
But see, they only got 1 year. They got 1985, and that's all they got. We at least have a decade to kind of look back on and say, man, that was pretty cool.
That was nice.
We're coming back, though. We're coming back. We're going to give the Pack a run for their money this year. Not going to run away with the division by Halloween again, like they have been.
Yeah, it's so weird you say that because I have heard that for the past decade. So like maybe one of these times, like it'll actually.
Come on, you're killing us, Ted. Ted, we got Ted. Ted.
Pull out the voodoo dolls. But guys, it has been an absolute. Oh, hold on, what do we got? Oh, jeez.
Come on now. You don't want nothing to do with nobody's Johnny Randall.
Never.
This has been fun. Thanks for having me on here.
This was great, guys. I really appreciate you coming on. Can you tell the people where they can find you, all the things that you do, and where they can check you out?
Sure. We've got our YouTube channel, Vikings Report. Drew and Ted just went over 12,000 subscribers. Hopefully, some of the hundreds of thousands of Tom Grossi subscribers will come over and just check us out from time to time.
Yes.
If you kind of figured out what we do, we like to have fun. We like to inform. We're not deep into PFF stats, but we give you a good preview each week. We talk about Vikings news. We got a couple of cool games going on. We have a couple of weekly fantasy football challenges. The John Randall jersey that Drew just held up that goes to the winner of our fantasy football contest at the end of the year. We've got our webpage just went up. Ruby, Drew's wife, is our producer. VikingsReport.com. That has all our links to our social media. You can find us on Facebook. My Twitter handle is @Purple Buckeye. The show handle is @Report Ted, 2 T's. We've got our merchandise over there, that Vikings Report with Drew and Ted coffee mug you can buy. Can't top it.
Not the LaFleur one. The LaFleur one's.
Get my mug for your mug is what I like to say. Get the so all that stuff, VikingsReport.com.
Yeah.
We're also affiliated with PurplePainForums.com. We're their official podcaster, their official message board. And just had a whole bunch of tremendous growth in the year and a half we've been on. And thanks so much for having us on and letting us talk about this stuff. And it had a great time.
Awesome, guys. No, I appreciate you taking the time. This is a lot of fun. We'll definitely we'll do some stuff. I just one quick question. So you said the fantasy winner, they win that Randall that jersey.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I'm wrong. I thought like the pandemic was over and people didn't need toilet paper anymore. Or is that something you're just like?
No, well,
that's it. Book me a flight. Hey, wake up! Book me a flight. We got it. Me and Tom gonna have a little sit down. You know what I mean?
We're just gonna have a chat. I just want to talk to him.
Me and Pack asked. We're gonna have a little sit down.
That's it. I got the toilet paper for my pack ass. That's it. But guys, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate you, folks. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi, and as always, go Pack, go.
Score!